Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here and welcome to the 5th training webinar of the Horizon project Symbiosyst. Today afternoon, the focus will be on participatory approaches in agrivoltaic systems. Thank you, the invited speakers, for being here, and for my colleague from Enea, Federica Colucci, who will take care about the moderation of the questions and answers session after the two interventions that are planned today afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Let me introduce the speakers. I kindly ask to the speaker to switch on the cameras. The first speaker today afternoon will be Alexis Pascaris. Alexis is a social scientist and subject matter expert in agrivoltaics at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Colorado, in USA. Her work aims to improve knowledge about the socio-political aspects of agrivoltaics by investigating issues around stakeholder adoption, community acceptance, policy effects, and implementation barriers. She engages farmers, solar developers, policymakers, extension agents, and other key stakeholders to understand their interests and needs in agrivoltaics with the aim of facilitating cross-sector collaboration and supporting appropriate deployment. On the NRIEL and Inspire team, Alexis provides thought leadership in social sciences, conducts novel analysis, develops resources to inform implementation, and coordinates national research efforts. So Alexis, as in Symbiosyst webinars, Alexis represents the research side today afternoon. Thank you, Alexis. And let me introduce briefly the other two speakers, so to have a complete frame of the intervention in the afternoon. From the industry side, we welcome Tommaso Barsali and Bendogona Rodrigo from Starlight Energy. Tommaso Barsali is Senior Associate Agronomist for Starlight Farm. After his past experiences as an organic farmer and his work in the fields of bioeconomy and international cooperation, he now contributes to the co-creation of agrivoltaics project with farmers. Begoña Rodrigo has over 17 years of experience in environmental and social and governmental international consultancy, focusing on the energy and extractive sectors as well as sustainable finance. At Starlight, she leads the company efforts to align and strengthen environmental, social, and governmental and environmental and social practices across geographies, helping to de-risk project and maximize positive impact on people and the planet. She's currently developing Starlight's social impact strategy, focused on building social license to operate and improving community engagement, all aligned with international standards such as EFC, NWB, and TISFD. So thank you to our very nice and kind speakers in the afternoon. So I please Alexis as first speaker. Please, the floor is yours, and thank you for joining us from Colorado. Thank you, Alexis.
Grazie, Paolo. Thank you all for having me. Hopefully you can see my screen. I can't do full screen share, but happy to be able to drive the bus here from Colorado this morning. As introduced, my name is Alexa Vasquez. I have the great honor of working with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory on agrivoltaics issues, more solar siting more broadly. And the majority of my professional work has really been dedicated to understanding the social and political aspects of agrivoltaics deployment in the US and more broadly. So really happy to share some research-based insights to this conversation. And throughout the day, if there's questions at the end, really like to make this a discussion. So just a quick overview of where I'm headed. I want to give a little bit of framing around the motivation behind agrivoltaics, specifically in the US, considering different social pressures, political landscapes. That probably won't be new to you, but I think it sets a nice foundation for understanding the overview of our development and research trends that I'll provide. And then I'll really pivot to talking about social science research and and stakeholder engagement practices and project development. So as we transition to greater renewable energy penetration, it's becoming more clear that the obstacles ahead of us are more social and political than technical. There are very complex public responses to siting solar projects.
Alexis, we cannot hear you. Alexis?
Can you hear me, Paolo?
Yes, now you're back. Maybe there was a
Okay.
streak in the connection. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. So we are talking about why people are upset about solar coming to their neighborhood. And I think one of the bigger issues and is relevant to this conversation are concerns with the procedural and distributional aspects of solar siting. So how are people involved in solar, the planning process, and what kind of ownership models are we talking about? How are the benefits and burdens of solar going to be distributed? So even broadly, if people support solar generally, specific project proposals are really often met with resistance to siting. So I just want to provide a little bit more context and demonstrate that when we consider social factors, the technical potential of solar is greatly reduced. So on the left here is a graph showing global technical potential of solar. We recognize and we understand there's a lot of potential for solar technically, but when we overlay that technical potential with social factors, so the middle graph is technical potential, and when we overlay that with social factors on the right, we see a great decline in the available land for solar. This is one case study in a county in California, but I think broadly, just this notion of great technical potential of solar is really challenged when we start to consider the social aspects. So that's become our motivation for agrivoltaics. Among many other benefits, we're exploring agrivoltaics as a solution to addressing these social aspects, social resistance, and how can we make solar do better socially, environmentally, and economically. So I'm going to go through some of the research and development trends in the US. So as the solar industry is moving towards broader deployment and facing these social challenges, agrivoltaics is being framed as a way to provide really valuable co-benefits. So there's a really clear signal from the solar industry that they are interested, and it's a meaningful way to potentially save internal to the company, but also provide novel business models to farming partners. But on the other hand, some developers are really hesitant to adopt agrivoltaics, and they sense that there's high costs, complexity, and uncertainty. So at least here at home, our solar developers in our industry needs really good evidence to help them de-risk adopting agrivoltaics. And I think there's a really important role of research in helping de-risk that. If we look at a map of trends, what I'm showing here is a census of currently operational agrivoltaic installations in the US. So we're actively tracking projects. This is the agrivoltaics map operated by the NREL Inspire project. And it helps us, it provides really valuable data, not only to us, but everyone can access this. This is a free tool. So if you're interested in exploring trends, system sizes, locations, applications, I really would like to highlight this tool. It helps us demonstrate patterns. You can see a great concentration of pollinator-friendly solar in the Midwest. This region by the Great Lakes. Lots of activity on the western coast as well. Here we see greatest dual use applications with grazing at the utility scale, and we're seeing fewer crop projects, and they're typically less than 10 megawatts. So crop-based agrivoltaics in the US is happening at the community solar scale. And we'll see changes in those patterns as policy landscapes evolve and there's more exposure and understanding about agrivoltaics, but this is where we are today. So I just want to provide this and demonstrate. We have a free tool if you want to go explore more. In terms of the policy landscape, I'm showing an overview of known dual use policies. I'm saying dual use because there are states that are focused on agrivoltaics or pollinator habitat, which is something that's very popular in the United States. So there's a diversity in the policy tools that states are using. Some states are offering financial incentives, specifically Massachusetts and New Jersey on the East Coast. Another approach being done in Illinois or New York is a preference. So when someone replies to a solicitation or request for proposal, if the developer is demonstrating agrivoltaics, they're given more favor. Their application is treated more favorably in the process. Here in Colorado, we're just getting started, and the state has deployed a research and development funding program. So everyone across the state is working hard on stakeholder engagement and crop-based experimental research, and the findings from that will then inform a policy program. So there's a lot of diverse approaches. It'll be interesting to see how this evolves over time. But what we can do at this point in time is start to investigate how this policy is impacting deployment. So we're not clear the role of policy in facilitating agrivoltaics. Sometimes it can enable projects. Sometimes it can constrain projects. And I know through conversation with European colleagues, sometimes policy can constrain deployment in ways that really creates challenges for developers and farmers. So lots of rich research opportunities here as we move forward together. This is an overview of the INSPIRE project, which is the US Department of Energy's longest and largest investment in agrivoltaics. It started in 2015, and we cycle through 3 years of dedicated investigation. When we first started, it was really about feasibility assessment in the US. Is this possible? Where is it possible? So we established 24 research sites across the US and have been doing field work there, also assessing trade-offs and costs and benefits. As we've evolved, and we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary, we're now in a position where the US Department of Energy sees and acknowledges the potential of agrivoltaics and is encouraging us to develop resources. So we're in the process of developing tools and resources to support people like you, other developers, researchers, policymakers, to help understand the trade-offs involved in agrivoltaics. I think it's a great demonstration of cross-sector, transdisciplinary research relationships. And I'll talk more about this when we talk about stakeholder engagement and the importance of community building around agrivoltaics. And we've been tracking lessons learned across regions, across different types of agrivoltaics to identify the key success factors. So what makes an agrivoltaics project successful? And we organize those success factors into 5 themes: climate, the environmental factors, the configuration of the PV system, the crops, what crops are you choosing to integrate into the system, as well as compatibility with farming practices and collaboration. So the legal agreements, the partnerships, the broader social network that supports successful agrivoltaic projects. As many of you know, majority of the research to date has focused on optimizing the first 3 factors: the climate, the environmental conditions, the solar array, and the crop productivity. And that's wonderful. We've learned a lot about the technical and biophysical aspects about optimizing agrivoltaics for a given climate. But as the field progresses, we know that scaling and getting social acceptance and broader deployment is going to require increased attention to social aspects, so compatibility and collaboration. So this nested model of the agrivoltaic success factors helps emphasize these social aspects and helps us think about agrivoltaics in these terms, how the social aspects are really foundational. And social scientists are looking at agrivoltaics through a really important lens. We're asking questions about socio-political implementation barriers. We're talking about stakeholder adoption, community acceptance, legal frameworks, business models, all of the tangible things that can make or break a project. So just my goal for this talk today is to help you think more holistically, maybe appreciate the non-technical aspects of implementation. There's a few key takeaways from this body of literature. Social science on agrivoltaics is about 5 to 10 years old. There had not been much else. There's a lot of literature on solar and the social acceptance of solar, but when we talk about agrivoltaics, there's less work has been done, and there's a lot of work for there's a lot of opportunities for future research. Generally, we can take a few key takeaways related to implementation barriers. The first being uncertainty for the developer and the farmer. At least here in the US, people are asking for more proof of concept, better business models to run financial models, and really understand what adoption entails, what are the risks and trade-offs in these projects. Another key implementation barrier, again, is local acceptance. And I'll provide a case study right after this that kind of demonstrates the mixed effects of agrivoltaics on acceptance. And political feasibility, at least here in the US, is also being elevated as an implementation barrier. I'll talk through the importance of stakeholder engagement throughout the rest of the day, but also wanting to flag the importance of legal frameworks and policy. We're seeing instances in which policy can support projects and it creates that framework. It provides a financial incentive. It really gives direction to the industry. But we also see instances in which challenging policy provisions can constrain adoption or create risk for producers who are held to production standards. So going back to my first statements around the challenge of social acceptance and public resistance to solar, we want to understand how might agrivoltaics change the narrative about solar? How might agrivoltaics improve the acceptance of projects on the local level? So we deployed a survey in 2 US states at the county level to understand, would you be more acceptable of a project if it were agrivoltaics rather than traditional solar? And we found, yes, largely majority of the participants indicated greater acceptance and greater support for the agrivoltaics project over the solar project. And we also cataloged why, what matters to people when they're thinking about citing an agrivoltaics project in their community. There was key factors shaping support. Unanimously, the idea of providing economic benefit to their local farmers was number one. And local economic development opportunities as well was very interesting. And of course, the preservation of local agricultural interests. So when comparing solar versus agrivoltaics, community members saw agrivoltaics as a way to retain their agricultural heritage, keep agriculture in the community instead of totally transitioning the land use out of agriculture. But there was also concerns around the distribution of economic benefits. As I started with, our survey respondents were asking questions around who's going to benefit? Will the farmer benefit? Will the community benefit? Will this be a local company? These things matter when people consider if they'll support a project or not. Visual impact is also a challenge, whether it's solar or agrivoltaics. The landscape aesthetic and the amenity value that solar might compromise is also raised relative to agrivoltaics. And then there's that question around how will this impact our local agricultural economy? So this is a great first try at understanding what is the role of agrivoltaics in facilitating greater acceptance and deployment of solar. I think there's a lot more work to be done because acceptance is very place-based, very context-dependent, very project-dependent. Even if I support solar as an individual, I might not support it in a certain place at a certain time. It's very it's very contextual.
and it changes over time. So it's going to keep evolving, and I think there's a rich opportunity for us to investigate the role of agrivoltaics in facilitating better acceptance. So I'll conclude with just going through some resources to help you get started in thinking about engagement activities. So I know this webinar is dedicated to participatory approaches in agrivoltaics. So I want to give you some resources and food for thought, as many of you might be starting research projects or development projects. We have a great resource called Getting Started. If you just type in NREL Inspire Getting Started, you'll be able to access this. We have like a catalog where we've organized critical information about agrivoltaics across these 5 key topics, and they build successively on one another. So you start with the basics. I think you all have already graduated from Agrivoltaics 101, so you might go right to technical assistance, where you can see how different organizations are supporting each other and explore how we might help you. The groundwork activities, these are what you really need to do these are suggested activities on how to build a project for impact, longevity, and sustainability. We also have our agrivoltaics pathway. So these are site-specific planning steps that we've identified as critical that might really be useful to you. And then we also have a resource on design and configuration. So how do I design an array? What changes are needed to be compatible with farming? Just some good considerations as you move forward. This groundwork module, I'm gonna talk through it for just a few minutes just to give you a flavor, because I think it's most relevant to this audience and today's topic. So this agrivoltaics groundwork resource is really about the foundational activities needed for success. So we can talk about community engagement and collaboration. So at the onset of a project, being very intentional about identifying stakeholders who have influence over projects, who are also affected by projects. So stakeholder and community engagement and iterative planning from the beginning. So bringing your farming partner on board, including them in the design process, contract negotiation, project management, site preparation, thinking about your farming partner as a development partner and including them in the development process, as well as the community, working with your community to ensure that the project there's awareness, there's acceptance, and that proper agreements are in place. So the agrivoltaic systems are very unique. Everyone's going to require a different approach, and different business models are going to be necessary. So just thinking about inclusive participatory approaches to both research and project development. You'll also be thinking about advocacy and representation. So what are the local policies? How might I be involved in that? How might we use stakeholder engaged research to inform better local policy, etc.? There's going to be financial considerations for your project. There's also going to be training and capacity building considerations. One thing we see is really important moving forward is workforce development. So what is the workforce that's going to be needed to support the transition to agrivoltaics? Maybe we're talking about siting in an energy community, a community that's transitioning from historical oil and gas production into solar. How might we support that workforce in transitioning into agrivoltaics? What are the new jobs that we need? What are the community activities that we can facilitate? Maybe hands-on trainings for farmers or workshops where community members can come and exchange. I know Paolo and the team in Italia has been really great at providing workshops and site visits and really stimulating engagement, public education, and preparing the workforce for agrivoltaics. There's also the importance of knowledge and resource exchange, and that's why we're all here today as part of this European network, just demonstrating the importance of cross-sector collaboration, international collaboration. This is a great example of what it means to share resources across boundaries and really create a critical mass. So these are the groundwork considerations. Our goal with this is to really, if you undertake these activities, we believe, and through our experience, that it will help improve social acceptance and the techno-economic feasibility of projects and ultimately ensure long-term success of this effort we're doing together. So just final key takeaways. Thinking about collaboration and coordination, who is involved in the siting process matters. It matters not only for solar generally, but for agrivoltaics more so. There's more attention to engagement and collaboration and iteration and working together thoughtfully on how we're going to farm within these solar projects. The groundwork activities I suggested, just want you to walk away today thinking about how can we be more diligent in our participatory planning processes. And of course, I just want to highlight the social science tools and approaches as being really meaningful contribution to our transition to agrivoltaics. How we approach this is important, where we have an opportunity to do this right now, and I want to encourage more cross or transdisciplinary research relationships. So we're doing our best to consolidate everything that is known on best practices here in the US. We want to share information with other practitioners and stimulate more collaboration. So please be in touch. I hope this was helpful for encouraging thinking about the non-technical aspects of agrivoltaics, which really matter. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexis, for a very concise and exact presentation. So we had a lot of relevant inputs from your side. Thank you so much, much appreciated for so generosity.
Thank you.
So now the floor is to Tommaso Barsali, and then Begona Rodrigo from Starlight. So from the industry side, so why it is relevant that industry and developers adopt participatory approaches while developing agrivoltaic systems. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Right, okay. So once again, thank to Symbiosyst and Enea for this invitation to participate to this very interesting webinar. And thank you, Alexis, for your great presentation. I think you actually facilitated a lot of our job today coming after you. So just a bit of presentation. My name is Tommaso Barsali. I'm an agronomist and a former farmer also. And I work for Starlight Farm, which is a Next Energy Group company. And today, together with my colleague Begonia Rodrigo, we're going to present the approach of project development for agrivoltaics that we have in Starlight, what we have learned so far from the field, and the ideas that can come to mind concerning, in particular, obviously, the participatory approach to agrivoltaics. So how and when do we involve farmers? How do we involve the local community? What do we do with the feedback that we receive? And how can we use this to make better projects that are successful for all the actors involved? So as I was saying, I'm an agronomist. I'm more a field type of guy. So what I'll present is especially linked to agriculture. A little assumption that I have to declare at the beginning: this is more, what I'll present today is more related to utility scale size of projects. However, many of the items that we'll discuss and I'll present can also be, let's say, important for smaller projects. Okay, so I hope you can see my slides. So I will not, of course, take a lot of time to explain what is agrivoltaics. I take that the audience is already well informed. What is interesting for me to say at this point is that agrivoltaics is a complex system. So let's say the approach cannot oversimplify. And this complexity must be taken into account, and the actions that guide the project development must take into account this complexity. So as Alexis was saying, there are technical challenges, but there are also many social challenges. There are many actors. There are many, let's say, possibilities, and fundamental, let's say, idea that we should keep in mind is that agriculture is always local. So there's no one-size-fits-all type of agriculture. Even if you do grazing sheep or whatever type of activity you have to do, you always have, even to do plain agriculture without photovoltaics, you always have to adapt to the local context. So this is even more true in the case of agrivoltaics because there is this additional complexity. So agrivoltaics is not just your regular PV projects on just another field. It's a complex system, so it requires a complex project. And you can identify at least two subsystems, which are, of course, PV production and agricultural production. That are equally, let's say, important to define the system and also for the system to be authorized. Although, of course, in utility scale projects, the financial weight of PV is normally, generally speaking, much higher than the agricultural part. So this creates an imbalance, it's true, that, however, can be solved, can be addressed, at least, through participatory approaches. So it's just, as I was saying, it's just not solar panels on agricultural fields. It doesn't work like that. It has technical and social challenges. So the idea, our idea, and the general idea that also Alexis was explaining before, is that it requires a co-creation process, a multi-actor approach, because there are many actors involved. So the PV developer, the future electric producer, the landowner, the future farmer, and of course the wider local community. On these two last points, I would like to say that there are differences. So the local community, it's true that the farmer is part of the local community. However, of course, he's a very special actor of the local community because he is the one working inside the fence, or in any case, under the panel. So he gets, in my opinion, more to say, at least from a technical point of view, but also for many other aspects. This is not to say, of course, that the local community is not important, but it is, I think, an objective fact that the farmer is a special actor of the local community. So what is our approach at Starlight for AgriPV? So we think that AgriPV can be an opportunity. So an opportunity, of course, for the solar developer, for the project, for the electric producer, but also for agriculture. We think, and I also personally think, that AgriPV can be, let's say, a starter that can trigger some important changes in agriculture, because it forces to think differently. It forces to think as a system. So I think it can be, let's say, sort of a spark to bring change to agriculture business as usual, let's say. For example, agriculture becomes then a central element, if it becomes a central element of the project, and not just a side, let's say, effect. You can find that promoting nature integrated practices, so promoting biodiversity, promoting precision agriculture, and caring, for example, about soil regeneration are things that are good for agriculture, but they can also be optimized, optimal, and for PV production. So, for example, if you think of bifacial modules, so modules that can collect light also from under the panels, and the association with cover crops. So cover crops is a regular a common technique in agriculture to improve soil, say, stability and organic matter. But it also provides reflectance for light, so albedo, and this will increase the efficiency of bifacial panels. So there are points of contact through which the two things can be optimized together. So there are, of course, many opportunities. There are also many challenges. This is not to say that everything is easy and quick, but all this possible, let's say, opportunities for both agriculture and PV can only be attained, in our opinion, if we involve a participatory approach with local community, with the farmer. We do co-designing of the projects. Of course, research institutions are also very important because they have the tools to analyze in depth what actually happens in the field and outside the field with social sciences, of course. In the end, the general idea is that participatory approach for us is the basis to create a win-win scenario, which is the scenario that is most probably going to provide success for the project. Because let's also think about the fact that solar projects are there to stay for 30 years. So you have to find a solution that provides the foundations for long-lasting solution. It's not 1 or 2 year solution. Okay, so co-designing with farmers. So this is the buzzword, participatory approach, co-designing, etc. So what is it in practice? So in our experience and in my also opinion. So as I was saying, as I'm more a field type of guy. I like to go to the field. I like to talk with farmers. I like to discuss problems with them. So what does it mean? That you have to involve the farmer from the very beginning, because there are so many aspects that have to be taken into account that you cannot like develop a project, only the PV side of a project, and then go to the farmer and say, okay, this is going to be the project. Because first of all, of course, it doesn't help acceptance. And then there will be many flaws in your project that even the best intended PV developer will just not see. So it's very important to get advice from the farmer from the beginning and try to understand how this can work for him also. So the participatory approach, it means that the dialogue, of course, is transparent and it's horizontal. Even if the financial weight, as I was saying, in utility scale is very different normally. So you have to understand the agricultural limitations from the beginning, and these include technical limitation, economic limitation, like business plans, like Alexis was saying before, and also non-formalized ones. So cultural limitation, customer limitations. So as I was saying, agriculture is always local. So agri-PV has to become local. So in practice, it means one of the first steps is that even the most basic information on design that the PV developer has in mind should be handed to the farmer as soon as possible. Even if it's preliminary, because you will get feedback, you will get advice, and you will get, let's say, a set of limitations, possibly in the field, in person. This is very important. So you have to go to the field, you have to be in person, you have to be printed maps, go there, see the map, and pinpoint and make, let's say, a collective intelligence at work. So there are also, from a social science perspective, I think, one thing that maybe sometimes it's a general assumption that I see, which may be not exact, and which is rather important. So the landowner might not be the prospective farmer. So the landowner is a person that leases the land or sells it or whatever, let's say, institutional recognized form of possession he can provide. but he might not be interested in cultivating the land. For example, most typical example is due to age, and for a number of reasons. But the problem is, the fact is that the farmer that cultivates then, which is not the landowner, he takes all the risk in cultivation, but he doesn't get the lease, the money from land leasing. So this is very, it's a situation that is very different, and the two concepts should be, in my opinion, separated. So this is why preliminary information and contract structure should be handed to the farmers as soon as possible, together with technical information. Then optimizations should be, let's say, explained and discussed together with the farmer. As I was saying, biodiversity, like cover crops for albedo, as I was explaining before, and all the other practices that can provide a win-win situation for the farmers and the electric producers. For example, pesticide spraying is another example. So this can lead to soiling of panels. So this will increase the operation and maintenance costs. It will increase the number of times that you will have to go there and wash the panels. So, and at the same time, pesticide reduction or abandoning pesticides is good for biodiversity. So, these are all things that form part of the co-designing effort. Of course, this is a non-exhaustive list, but just a few examples. So then, what are the elephants in the room? So elephants in the room should be acknowledged, and they should be addressed as soon as possible. Problems or even sometimes hypothetical problems should be discussed, even if they're not real, because this builds dialogue and trust and all that comes with that. So the dialogue should be transparent. It should be open. So you have to discuss about everything. Even sometimes, for example, we find situations where at the end of a discussion, you understand that the farmers has, through word of mouth, so not through his direct experience, but word of mouth of others who have experienced agrivoltaics, then he has bad feedback. And this is something that you can only discover through dialogue. Then a big elephant in the room is that farmer generally they expect more work hours and less revenue, because it's more difficult to most of the time to go in a field where there are solar panels and trackers. And what is going to be the thing with shadow? Is it going? Yeah, it reduces evapotranspiration, but also it reduces light. So maybe my produce will be less at the end of the year. So working more to gain less is not exactly his cup of tea. Then, of course, for example, health and safety issues. So what is required? How can they be trained to work in an electric environment? And what are the dangers? But also advantages. So what about rural electrification, for example, in remote areas? Is it something that can the electric producer reserve a part of its electric production for rural electrification? Are there additional income activities from operation and maintenance of the panels? So maybe they can work on mowing, on the mitigation corridor maintenance, on washing the panels. Of course, they have to be trained for that, but it's an additional revenue that can make also a business model. And then more technical preoccupations like soil compaction during construction. How is my field is going to be after that you have built the Agri-PV system? Is it going to be very compacted? Is it going to be, for example, sometimes they're afraid that there might be pollution, which is, of course, is not the case. But these are all things that you have to talk about. So a good example of this approach that was organized by the University of Florence and financed by Starlight is a participative workshop that we held in the northeastern part of Italy, in Friuli, in a place called Tor Viscosa. So this was an open workshop free. We even had lunch together with local institutions, associations, citizens. No registration required. You just walk in and come and listen, and then, of course, also speak. It was in particular focused on landscape. So what was the importance of landscape for the local community? What were the signs that had to be respected and were important for the local community? So these were identified, and the good thing, in my opinion, is that they were then integrated in the later version of the project. Because, of course, if you ask for feedback, then people expect that you actually use that feedback then in the project that you're making. So there are many aspects that came out of this initiative, which we plan to replicate in all our AgriPV projects, is, of course, to address complexity, so involve all the actors, multi-actor approach is essential. Many people, for example, they still don't know the difference between PV and AgriPV. So people, they just say, oh, so this is, oh, you really can cultivate under the panels. So you understand that there is also a literacy problem in civil society around AgriPV. And as I was saying, so discussing on-site, in person, we went for a walk all together, like 20, 30 people, in the place, in the very place where the project was designed, where if it's authorized, it's going to be constructed. So going on site, staying in person, maps at hand is really essential. So this is my last slide. I would like to say just a few words on this. So this is a dialogue, okay? So an open dialogue is based on trust, and trust is difficult to build, and you can lose it in a very short time, even after a long time that you spend building it. But our, let's say, vision is that AgriPV can only function if it's co-created with farmers and the local community. There is no silver bullet. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. You have to find a locally appropriate solution. And then my last thing I would like to say is that we always have to remember that farming is not only an economic activity for farmers. So land is not only, let's say, an input of economic activity, because it's not a commodity. It's something that has to do also about identity. So this we should respect. Okay, so this is my last slide, I think, if I remember well. Then now the floor is for Begoña Rodrigo, and she will just briefly explain the ESG strategy and the social strategy that we as Starlight have developed, are formalizing for participatory AgriPV development. So Begoña, the floor is yours. I will just click the slides when you tell me.
Good. Thank you, Tommaso. So hello, everyone. My name is Begoña Rodrigo. I am very happy and honored to be here to share our views and experience related to AgriPV and stakeholder engagement. Conscious of time, I will go directly to the slides. So after hearing these great case studies and on-the-ground experience from Tommaso and Alexis, I would like to take a step back and explain how at Starlight and the Next Energy Group, our ESG strategies across climate, nature, and communities support and strengthen a truly participatory approach to AgriPV. So AgriPV is not automatically a sustainable solution. Without a strategic ESG aligned approach, it can actually worsen existing impacts, such as, for example, nature degradation, soil loss, or a stronger community opposition, especially when installations are highly visible or disruptive or not well integrated into the landscape. And we need to be careful because climate change is already one of the biggest threats to our food systems and therefore to agriculture. At the same time, well-designed solar projects can help to mitigate climate change. Intensive agriculture continues to drive biodiversity loss and reduce land resilience. And this biodiversity loss also undermines both farming and local well-being. So in this context, AgriPV must be part of the solution and not another layer of pressure. So this is why at Starlight, we don't pursue AgriPV just for the sake of installing panels. We see it as an opportunity to create long-term value for people, nature, and for the climate. So to achieve this, we rely on 3 strategic pillars, which are our climate transition and net zero strategy, our social impact strategy, and our nature strategy. And they are not just corporate commitments. They guide how to implement all this into our decision makers. So they guide us on our decision making to deliver AgriPV projects that are not only technically viable, but also socially acceptable, environmentally responsible, and climate smart. So, Tommaso, please, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So, I wanted to show here and explain you very quickly how we are developing our social impact strategy, because we are applying the same mindset here internally in building the social impact strategy as we do for a participatory approach. So first thing is not a top-down exercise. It is a collaborative process involving people and employees, in this case, from all business units, from all teams, from technical teams, business development teams, and also support teams such as human resources and the communication teams, as well as external stakeholders. So as also Alexis was mentioning, cross-sector sharing experience with other sectors and also with other geographies is important. So we have followed the 4 steps that you can see in the slide, and we conducted participatory activities, so engagement activities in every step. So we conducted first around 20 internal interviews across all levels, as I said, and this is with the intention of providing information about the social impact strategy, but also to collect their feedback, expectations, and also to understand what are the main constraints in terms of social and community issues into their day-to-day activities. We also conducted external interviews with investors, with CPCs, with ONMs, with Renewable Energy Association, and also external advisors. We also conducted internal workshops and polls with the employees. A very important point here that is also very important for participatory approach. We are also conducting feedback sessions after each phases. So we come back and say, look, these are the results. We validate them, and we collect additional feedback. And also we explain then how their concerns and suggestions have been addressed and considered in the definition of the social strategy. And this is really key for any stakeholder engagement with communities. We also appointed social performance champions, which are like the ambassadors of the strategy, and they are somehow similar to the community liaison officers that we appoint during construction and operations of our project. So they are like people that are known in the community, or in this case, in the different teams in the company, that people trust, and also that they feel very motivated and engaged with the social impact strategy. And so they can convey message, and also they can collect feedback, suggestion, ideas. You know, when we are in the coffee break or something, they can speak, and people can go and ask questions. So finally, we are planning also awareness sessions, to train our employees on the social strategy and the need for it. And finally, we will, once it is approved, we will disclose it publicly. So all these elements are really important for any participatory approach. So now next slide, Tommaso, please. Here, just very briefly, I wanted to emphasize the importance of the participatory approach. We, as part of our social strategy, we conducted a materiality assessment of the social strategy, and this materiality assessment is really specific to our business, to Next Energy Group and Starlight. And we have identified 5 key social issues that are material for our business. So that are risk and opportunities. The 3 most relevant across our projects are community relations, land use, and local employment and local benefits. And these are the areas where risk to project acceptance are the highest. And that's precisely where AgriPV, when combined with a participatory approach, can really make a difference. Next slide, Tommaso, please. Yes, so this is my last slide, and here I wanted to highlight why the social impact strategy really matters for participatory approaches. Participatory approaches need more than goodwill. They need structure, they need planning, and that's exactly what our social impact strategy will provide. It will offer a clear framework, principles, tools, and guidance to make participation effective and consistent across teams, projects, and geographies are also very important across the project life cycle, because we need to continue this participatory approach it doesn't stop in development. It has to continue during construction, during operation, and during the commissioning. So also more importantly is having a social impact strategy at corporate level makes stakeholder engagement a company-wide commitment. So it is endorsed at senior level and facilitates implementation across the business and acceptance within the business. So this way participation becomes part of how we work and part of who we are. So thank you very much for your attention, and now I hand over to Paolo and Federica.
Thank you, Begoña and Tommaso, for your relevant presentation. Really nice to hear from you, the way to manage. And indeed, it's important, and thank you for connecting in the end, Begoña, about that participation need a precise structure. So that's something also, of course, Alexis, remember the beginning, social science can provide specific tools, very strong tools with scientific evidence on the effectiveness. I will ask you 1 minute, but would like to introduce you why Symbiosyst today decided to focus on participation, something that I wanted to do at the beginning. I will do that right now. Because indeed, one of the tasks of the Symbiosyst project is participation. So, and to develop and test co-design strategies. So let me just show you before the questions. In the while, if you have questions, you can write them now. Yeah. So about Symbiosyst, the concept and ambition of this Horizon project is to provide innovation, but really trying to align standardization, but flexible and adaptable to specific needs in different climates and landscapes, as also Tommaso was mentioning. Agriculture is local, so how to adapt to local condition. That's why in Symbiosyst, at the beginning, we thought in this project that they needed for community engagement, and especially in the work package 6 and the task 6.4 that is managed by URAC in South Tyrol, ETA, Florence, ENEA, and SBB, which is the local farmer associations. We had a specific task of support interaction with stakeholders and fostering participations. That's something that has been managed combining two aspects: field visit to the project demonstrator. The Symbiosyst did construct some demonstrator projects, one in South Tyrol, in Catalonia, in Calabria, and in South Holland, with co-design workshop. We wanted to test co-design workshop. That's, for example, the last one was in June, last June in South Tyrol at the demonstrator that was constructed by the Horizon project, thanks to European funds, on the apple groves. And with those are some images on what we did all together. So field visit, understand the local agriculture, the local landscapes, and then sitting together and provide to orient future strategy and future design. Next one will be in Catalonia next November. You're all invited around Spain to join November 22nd with a field visit at the demonstrator in Catalonia, close to Barcelona, and workshop. Thank you. So, questions, please. Federica, the floor is yours. Are there questions?
Yes, but there is no question. So a question. I think I would ask to our speakers because agrivoltaic is an opportunity for a sustainable future, and I think that produce many benefits for farmers, for rural community. But I think that maybe benefits are not yet clear. So I would ask you how to make benefits clear for the rural community and in general for the society. So which tools we can use to make this.
Federica, also saw there is a question from one of the participants. So, yeah.
Ah, okay. No, I don't.
Maybe I can try a brief reply. So I think that it is true that as I was saying, there is not so much literacy about agri-PV features and possible opportunities, both for, let's say, civil society and also for more technical actors like farmers. So I think, from my perspective, this is a typical extension problem. So when you have technical, let's say, and scientific knowledge, that has to be vulgarized and passed over in simple terms to technical and non-technical public. So this is, of course, the first point. So having guidelines, having, of course, also online tools, having, let's say, technical trainings is, of course, essential for this knowledge on agri-BP opportunities and challenges to be known. On the other hand, I think from a strictly technical point of view, I think that research is still a little bit in its infancy. It's slowly moving from its infancy. So it's also true that scientific evidence is there, but it's not yet conclusive. And because agriculture is always local, so it has to be declined in many different locations. So I think there's a lot of interesting work to be done in the future years on this side. Yeah, but let's always remember that farmers normally they don't read nature, they don't read science. So we should hand them over information that is easier to understand. And I don't mean easier to understand because they cannot understand a peer-reviewed article. It's just that they don't have time. They're not used to it. So let's make life for them easier to understand what is at stake with AgriPV.
Okay, thank you. So we have two questions. Allora, thank you for your insightful presentation. In your experience, what do you see the main challenges in implementation participatory approach in agrivoltaic project, and where might they be more difficult to implement? So I don't know if it's maybe for Alexis. Do you want to answer to the question? Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. I think it's a good question. So I'll just repeat it for framing. What are the major obstacles or challenges associated with participatory planning? We can talk about it as something that's really important, but what are the really practical hurdles? I think one for us, it's very simple and we can overlook it, is actually getting high attendance of farmers in the room. And so we've learned to very strategically organize our events in the off season. So not when farmers are preparing the fields or actively cultivating or at market, but we often hold our events that we want to ensure high participation of agricultural stakeholders in the winter time. And if that's not possible, we even if we have to have an event in the summer, we would hold it in the evening. So not to interfere with agricultural activity. So it's very, very simple, but we've learned the hard way that if we don't meet people where they are and align our events with the reality of farming, we won't have good representation from agricultural stakeholders. So that's very simple, but like bigger picture, thinking about barriers to participatory planning is the communication style and the types of events in which you're holding. Sometimes there's barriers to access. If we're talking about online resources, there can even be even language barriers. If we're holding events that are, community level events, but they're not well promoted, or they're not aligned well with the interests of the community, they're not marketed properly, I think we really lose potential in who can be involved in these conversations. So it kind of would lean on my communication colleagues in terms of how do we get people properly aware and engaged, but then actually like in the room, I think there's a lot of different tools and methods we can use to have a meaningful conversation. It's just how do we, at being really proactive at the beginning of the process, thinking about getting people engaged and sustaining that interest over time. I'm happy to hear from Begonia or Tommaso if you think there's other in your experiences from a developer perspective, like, has it been hard to get community members in the room? What have been your strategies?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said, Alexis, and I will also add consultation fatigue is something that needs to be taken into account. So we cannot be, consulting the communities all the time because their time is also very important. And then at the end of the process, they will be tired and they will not be attending your meetings or. So consultation fatigue is something to take into account. And also using different means for communication, not only one. Communication needs to be tailored to the local context. So some people will prefer Facebook, for instance, and others emails, but it has to be a mix. And also, as Tommaso said, the language should be appropriate, not too technical.
Yeah, I think also I very much agree with what you both just said. And I think, for example, food is also a very important ingredient for this type of events. But it's true. I know that, in Italy, we spend a lot of time thinking about food, especially when you organize events. The first question is, what are we going to make them eat? But, for example, in Torviscosa, the event that was organized by University of Florence, local producers of food were invited to provide the catering. So there was a local beer producer, there was a local restaurant that organized the catering. So this is also important because it sparks a discussion about the local value of agriculture, right? So I think providing food, not just for the fact that you're providing food, but because it is part of the discussion in the end, I think it's also a good way to foster a participatory dialogue. So yeah.
Thank you. Do you want to add something, Tommaso?
Federica,
No.
I see there is a question
Yes.
from Andrea Magarelli to
Alexis. Could you
Yes.
explain which aspect make agrivoltaic so attractive in Minnesota, as demonstrated by the large number of devices from the my view, solar energy availability, local policy, or something else? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So why is Minnesota covered in solar? And I think we can draw a lot of correlation with a state level policy program. So the state of Minnesota has a voluntary environmental program in which developers who demonstrate meeting pollinator habitat friendly standards are given a preference, they're treated more favorably, they actually get recognized for leadership in the industry. So in the United States, broadly, we consider the pollinator habitat kind of in the same family as agrivoltaics, as distinct from traditional solar that has no low impact strategy and no conservation quality to it in terms of the land use. So Minnesota is home to incredible amounts of solar because of this state policy that's really driving voluntary leadership. And I think that's really incredible because usually in the policy conversation, we want to see financial incentive. We want to see a feed-in tariff. And I know that's really common practice in Europe. We only have 2 in the United States at the state level. So for us to see such incredible industry activity for a voluntary program speaks a lot to me about our values and what communities want to see and how the industry responds to that type of incentive. It's a good question, and I love to see more of it. And I'd love to see more of it in terms of agrivoltaics, specifically like crop and livestock production. So thank you for raising that. I think it's a good demonstration of how different policy tools can really drive innovation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Federica, I also have a question, maybe.
No,
and then
no
we
more
can...
questions.
I
So,
just
Paolo,
1 minute
do you want
more.
to make a question?
Yeah. Many developers, I think, not ethical developers we saw with Starlight were the ethics, but many people dealing with agrivoltaics maybe would complain that is designing also through participation, such we saw a very attentive way to listen to communities would be more cost effective and would require more time. Do you think that maybe taking more time for design like this would then reduce the permitting process? I mean, is this going to impact the permitting process in the way permitting is easier because there is a more bottom and socially based or participated design to be submitted for permitting? This is for all of you, of course. Because it's some those I heard many of those questions all around, also talking with many industries in several occasions, and not all would be ready probably to do this. So we need to have more impact, but probably one of the key performance indicator would be, is this going to get the permitting process easier or not?
Yeah, maybe I can take this one. So actually there is no, for example, in Italy, there is no premium for this type of approach, but we think that it should be, because for many reasons, because of course it's the type of approach that ensures that the project is aligned with local community needs. So it's not only a bureaucratic approach, but a factual and practical one. The reason why I think there are many fear that this can actually be negative for the project development is because of the timeline that they see. So a pure project developer has his objective is to have the project authorized and then sell it. In our let's say in our group, in Next Energy Group, we handle all the phases, as Begonia was saying, of projects. So project development, then construction, then also operation. So as I was saying, if you have 30 years in mind of lifespan for a project, then you understand that this investment is something that is going to increase the value of the project, because otherwise, so I think it's of course you have to invest more money, more time. It's more expensive. It's true, right? But in the end, in my opinion, it's something that's actually saves time and saves also money. So I think we have to. It's probably a matter of perspective, of general perspective of the economic actor that is developing the project.
Yes, and on this regard, we are experiencing this in many projects. So developing solar is not as 10 years ago. Now communities are more concerned, authorities are more concerned, there is more land competition, and the authorities, some of them are technicals and others are politicians. And the politicians, once they want to have the community aligned with the project and happy, otherwise they will not authorize the project. So this is one thing. We are also seeing a polarization of renewables. So for instance, in North America, in Canada in particular, depending on where you are, the government and the authorities can be more against renewables. And one of the excuses also to deny projects are when you don't have the community acceptance. And in countries where they have the community acceptance included in the permitting process, then it's key. I mean, really can kill the project if you don't get the community acceptance when you submit the authorization. So I believe this is something that more and more developers are now concerned about.
Thank you. Federica, maybe it's time to close. We are 5 minutes late, but
Yes.
thank
So,
you
thank
to
you.
everyone. For sure, we
Yes.
need more science and more research. So I'm glad also that in
Good work.
Symbiosyst we are testing co-design. So please stay updated with Symbiosyst or follow us on our channels, on our webinars, and our future outcomes and deliverables also related to co-design. And Federica, really thank
Yes.
you to our
Thank
speakers.
you, and we will see in the October, so with the next webinar, and the topic will be the energy uses in the farm, so we can speak about
October 23rd, right? Yes.
Yes, maybe. Okay.
Good.
So have a good work and a good holiday.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you
to
very much.
everyone.
Thank you all.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Ciao.
you. Have a nice
Bye-bye.
summer.
Thank you, everyone.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.